everybody, and I am back here in the fandom, car. It is the most earth-breaking, ground-shaking, but never media show money-taking. The man, the myth, the legend, the most electrifying villain in YouTube entertainment today. Back for another Penny Dreadful review, and welcome everybody who is joining me here on this Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day. Um, Being someone who was in the service, today's kind of a special day, so it feels uh, kind of good to be doing a review on a show that I like or that I'm really starting to get into on this Memorial Day. So, anyways, today is going to be a look at Penny Dreadful, the brand new episode, episode 5, Children of the Sun. And I gotta say, it's a bit of a weird title. I still haven't figured out exactly what the title has to do with the episode, but welcome everybody, anyways. Hello there, Jamie Vick. Good afternoon to you too, Gary North. Good to see you guys here. I wanted to first say thank you for everyone who's been watching these reviews. I had 156 views on my or watch throughs for my previous episode. So hopefully I'm doing a good job. Hopefully I'm explaining in detail the things that I'm liking about these episodes, the things I don't like, stuff like that, giving you a better perspective of how I see this show. And I try really hard not to compare it to the original because I feel like this is almost two very different shows. It might be in that same realm, but the framing and the story seem to be taking a different turn than uh, than the originals shows did. And I almost want to say that the characters in the world of this show are slightly better built than the world of the previous show. It's really interesting. So let's just dive right into this review. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to give you an overview of the episode. I'm going to do a non-spoilish kind of review for this segment, and then I'll tell you when I get to the actual nuts and bolts and breaking down the characters and the different things that happen with them. But the show is really starting to narrow down who they're highlighting per episode. Now we're 5 out of 12 episodes in, and we're going to reach the halfway point the next episode. Now, if anyone watches TV, at the halfway point is when something big happens. But I feel like episode 4 was kind of the big shift for the show. In the previous episode, Mateo killed uh, that douchebag police officer guy. Sorry, I can't remember his name. I really didn't like his character that much. But this was a big monumentous moment. This to me really defined a lot of characters, and this episode sort of builds off of what happened in the previous episode. And it kind of starts building more of the look at the perspectives of the different characters. And Tiago is really starting to show cracks in his loyalty between being a cop and being um, part of the Mexican community. And I gotta say, I really am enjoying the dynamics between the characters. And welcome, Thomas Connolly. Good to have you here. So, I mean, it's been an interesting sort of journey for the main character. And my concern was that I wasn't really going to like the main character. But the more the show goes on, the more this actor does a really great job uh, conveying the struggle that he has between being a police officer and being part of this community. And look, I like the fact that this show could lean heavy into politics, but it's leaning more heavily into the family dynamic, the struggles that something in this time era would take place. And I like the fact that they've interwoven this story into the 30s. So the politics are taken out of it because this is just actually showing us things that really happened in the 30s, right? There was really a sense of unease and tension within the United States. With World War II around the bend, we're just starting to get into that kind of facet of the story, and it's really intriguing. So in this episode, the synopsis is basically this picks up right where episode 4 left off. Tiago has been MIA. He was with Sister Molly, and they were, doing their own thing. And Mateo is kind of realizing the ramifications of what he's just done, and you have Natalie Dormer's character who is kind of coaxing him along and feeding into his hatred for everything that's happening up to this point. From the first episode to now, he's had this underlining uh, hatred for the way he's been treated, the way his family has been treated, just building slowly until it exploded into the last episode, and she's fostering this rage that he has. And I like it too because it's a dynamic of the young versus the old. The older brother Raul clearly has demons that he's been wrestling with, anger problems. And on some level, Tiega has anger issues too, but he's more low key and he keeps them all surface level. The younger brother is just the extremes of both these brothers, and that really is illustrated in the last episode with the brutality of that scene. I gotta say, that was probably the most vicious scene that the show has had. What happened the last episode, like, it was really visceral, and I think it illustrated a great point of all of this pent up frustration and aggression that he's had building inside of him. And I almost feel like he's been ignored because the older brother and the middle brother have their own shit going on, and he has been like treading water. And when Josefina had that thing happen to her with the cops, it really just uh, pushed him over the edge. And he has no sense of control over these things that he's feeling. So the episode picks off, and now they're kind of shifting away from this murder because the most immediate problem is there was a dead cop dropped butt naked at the precinct with his throat viciously cut. And they have to kind of go and investigate this. And Tiega, on some level, knows what's going on. Lewis, who's always great, man, this guy, Lewis is one of my favorite characters in this show. He brings a sort of sanity to the badge, and in their partnership, he's kind of a great counterbalance to whatever emotions Diego's feeling. He is kind of the anchor of their relationship and reins him in, because you see him really losing his shit in this episode and kind of breaking that calm mode. Josefina, I gotta say, Josefina's been in the background of the show, but her and Sister Molly have this moment in this episode that's great, and I'm gonna get to that when I start to highlight the characters. But they have a great moment, and Sister Molly comes to the realization that her and Josefina and Tiega are related, and the irony, I'm sure, is not lost on her that she's sleeping with her brother and going against the church. And there's a whole thing with the investigation, which seems to be pointing towards this church. So, that's got to be addressed, and I'm sure that's going to come up later. And as they get closer in this investigation, and Tiega is starting to put things together, he's starting to realize some stuff, and he maybe even knows before the ending happens who is behind all of this, but doesn't want to bring himself to that realization. And so basically, the episode is just them chasing down leads and trying to find out who killed a fellow officer and putting a lid on it, because right now, the racial tensions between the police and the Mexican community is at an all-time high. And as Lewis states in the episode, this was a declaration of war. And the Mexican community going against the police force is going to end with a lot of bloodshed, a lot of people losing their lives, And I'm gonna have to side on the cops with this one. It ain't gonna end well for the Mexican community. And I mean, you can trace this back to any movement that goes against the police. It's just not a good thing. So they kind of want to figure this out and put a lid on it before both sides do something reckless. And that's mainly what this episode is about. So overall, what do I think? Once again, another well acted episode. There's really strong performances here. Natalie Dormer is exceptionally good in this episode. She has a lot of great moments and a lot of good things with her characters. I still hate the character who interacts with Mateo. I even forgot the name she took for that one character, but I hate her accent and the way she acts when she does that particular character. But she's more bearable in this episode. She says a lot of things that are relevant to what he's feeling, and you can see her kind of stoking the flames, making him feel good about him doing this horrendous act. She's trying to get his mind off of it, and she's trying to get him to alleviate the guilt. And I really feel like they're using him as an instrument to stoke the movement with the underground versus the police. And all in all, the Mexicans versus the police officers, she wants to see this blow up. I'm starting to get a clear picture, and her whole role seems to be just inciting anarchy and chaos. Every scene she's in feels like she wants chaos all around her. And how this fits in with Santa Morta and her little gig she got going on, the Angel of Death, I don't know yet. It's still all very vague, but you get a real good insight into the main players in this episode. And you get a really good sense of what Natalie Dormer's plan seems to be. It's coming more and more into focus. And, I feel like it's just chaos, it's just anarchy. I don't know the reasonings. I don't believe in mythology Magda was a agent of chaos, but I'm not particularly sure because there's tons of references. But her character just seems to be solely motivated in creating tensions in all these different factions, leading up to some kind of big plan that me or the audience is not made aware of or privy to quite yet. Um, but her performance, the dude who plays Lewis, even the grandmother in this episode is really, really good. She has a moment with Lois where, with Lewis, where they're talking about religion, and you know, it's just a really great moment of like two older people talking about kids and the younger generation and how they're quick to act and how the older generation kind of has got to rein them in and make them realize that there's other ways to go about things. And there's this like moment where she says, "Look after my son," and it's a really touching stuff that goes on. There's a lot of good, solid writing and a lot of good character development within this episode. And each actor really brings their A game because like especially with the love story details and all of this, it could start getting kind of corny. It could feel really forced. But even the stuff between Sister Molly and Tiago feels so organic. Like her finding out that she's counseling the sister of the person she's sleeping with, and the way she looks surprised is really great acting. Like there is good direction and there's good dialogue in this show. Every scene and every person who acts appears to be giving it 100% and really bringing their A game, and I appreciate that. It makes for spectacular writing, and where the supernatural is missing, uh, John really wants to drive home that this version of Penny Dreadful is built on the characters and the world, and that the supernatural is inhabiting almost the real world. That these people do have hidden biases, and that these supernatural forces are just bringing it to the surface. And I kind of like that idea. I like the idea that everyone does harbor some sort of prejudice and that they wear a mask or a disguise to the outside world, and that they all have different vices and that they're showing different sides to different people. And I think that's the gist of the show, is that everybody is hiding who they are and they're covering up different things to mask what their true intentions is. And that's some damn good writing. I gotta hand it to them because, like I said when I first started reviewing this, I thought this was gonna be one of those shows that was gonna be heavy on the politics stuff like that, and there wasn't gonna be a deep meaning. It was going to be forced, and the acting was going to be subpar, and the effects were going to be meh. But the show has surprised me. It's been subtle. It's been building slowly and trying to build and make you care about the characters inhabiting the world. And every character is deeply flawed in this show. The Mexican side is flawed. They've got narrow-minded views. They're very aggressive, and they could have just did like they were all right and the white people are bad and they're trying to take their land, but they don't play it that way. They play it very down the middle. Everybody has their shit and their baggage that they come along with, and no one side is particularly right. You can choose in the show what side you want to take, and the show doesn't damn you one way or the other. It says there's even a line that says, we're just people, and it's true. It's just people who make choices, and these choices have an impact not only on them, but because of the times on the world around them. Each individual's choice leads to a ripple throughout this world. And, I give them credit. That is some very deep writing where this could be a shallow, basic show. It's choosing to play the long game and be uh, deep and in depth and emotional and get you invested in caring about the characters so that when you lose one, you really feel the loss. Or when one makes a bad choice, you're sitting there going, man, why would you do that? Like, I'm so disappointed in you. And it feels good. I feel great to be invested in a show like this. So overall, what do I think? I think this episode lacked a lot of the action from the previous episode, but I feel like the action was in the response to what happens. And I'm going to give this a higher rating because the ending to me was very heartbreaking. And I'll get into that in a little bit when I get into spoilers. But the end of this episode to me was quite possibly one of the most heartbreaking scenes I've seen. And I could see this show going for that OG Penny Dreadful vibe. This main character is taking that tormented role, and the further he goes into his job versus his family, it gets more heartbreaking with the decisions he's going to have to make or not make, the choices he does or doesn't do. And it's going to be interesting in the next episode to see the effect of the choice he made at the end of this episode, because it was a pretty big moment. And I almost want to say a really big turning point within this show, and a choice that he was hit with throughout this whole episode. And it's kind of clear on where he's starting to fall in his allegiance versus police versus family. And, it's a real life choice, duty versus protecting your family. In the end, that is relatable culturally, no matter what kind of background you have. And I think that's what the show is trying to convey, is that white, black, Mexican, whatever, you're still faced with tough choices. You're still going to have moral dilemmas, especially in a field like that. Do you choose the job, your duty to protect the greater good over your family and what it's going to do to your family if you make that opposite choice? And just for that alone, I'm going to give this episode a solid 9. Really, this episode to me gets a 9 on the sense of writing and direction and dialogue. And really, even with the talking, there's never a dull moment because I'm on the edge of my seat when these big revelations are happening. Like when a certain piece of dialogue is delivered and things start coming into focus. And we, as an audience, know who committed the act from the last episode, but following the journey of Lewis and Tiago putting together the pieces and Tiago realizing who it is, and having to make that choice at the end of this episode, and just the look and how he plays it. You guys see my thumbnail. That to me, like the way he looks and the way they frame that last shot is pretty much feels like what the story is going to be by the end of it all. It feels like he is going to be sitting in the middle of ruin and wreckage and trying to pick up the pieces. I didn't realize how central his character is, but quite literally, this man is holding together everything. He is cursed by being able to put shit together, of having a certain knowledge. And like great detectives, Sherlock Holmes, things like that, or even lower detectives, you have that intuition. You have that ability that most people don't have. And that's why you're in the field you're in. And for him, it's like a gift and a curse, much like I feel like this thing with Santa Morta is. He was touched by her. I feel like he has a really big role to play. And at the end of it, all of these experiences are going to lead to an ultimate choice he's going to have to make. And I feel like he's not going to win no matter what choice or what side he chooses. It's going to be him who bears the brunt of having to hold up the weight of all of these decisions. And the fucked up sad part is, throughout this whole episode, you see him shouldering everything. Even Lewis is like, man, I'm your partner. If we don't have each other's back, if you can't lean on me, then this doesn't work. And I feel like that's the whole entire point of the show, is that he shoulders everything, and if he doesn't learn to let people in and carry some of the weight, it's going to destroy him. And this revelation clearly shatters him by the end of this episode. And it's so beautifully done. It's so beautifully shot. Hats off. The music, the art, everything was spot on. I enjoyed it, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. That's just my general non spoiler review of this. And now I'm going to deep dive into the characters, and I'm going to talk about each individual character's little moment in this episode and how I got to my 9 rating, because, oh my God, a lot happened in this episode. There were a lot of people, even people who weren't highlighted in the episode, had pivotal moments. So I'm going to kind of go in order, and with I'm going to start with Detective Lewis. I'm going to leave Tiago to the end because he has the last frame of the shot, and I feel like he needs the last little bit. But Lewis, last episode, he's come to the realization there's Nazis in America. He's dealing with all of this, and his story arc gets sidetracked by the fact that there is a murder of a cop that him and Tiago don't really like. The guy's an ass, but there's a lot of good moments, and there's a moments where they go back to, the house, and they're talking to Raul, and he's the last person on earth you would think would say anything nice about the cops. I mean, his people got beat, they lost a lot of people, but he says something in the episode that I think really highlights stuff to them. And it kind of both hits them, where he goes, it doesn't matter who this person is. No person should die like a dog in the street. And, you know, this guy got shot and essentially died because of having a beef with the officers. But in that moment, he also highlights that no matter what race it is, as a person, as human beings, it's not right how this officer died. It's not right he got his throat slit. It's not right he was butt ass naked and dropped off at the police station. And I appreciate them humanizing this cop. I mean, this dude essentially raped their sister, which they still don't know about. But the fact that he treated Tiago like shit since episode 1, and he's had this narrow view, and yet the people that he's taken his anger out, because clearly he has his own issues with the Mexican community, but the people that he's taken his anger out, they even said, man, he died wrong. What happened to him should never have happened to anybody. And I like that the writers put that in the forefront because I feel like they're not demonizing each side. They're showing that each person is a human being. And yes, whether they're prejudiced or not, or whether they have these different worldviews, that doesn't mean they deserve to die. It doesn't mean that they deserve to be humiliated. There's other ways of handling it. And I really respect that because this show could have went another way with that. They could have, you know, made him look like this prick who just got everything that was coming to him. And, watching the CW and Batwomen, that's what most writers fall into the trap of. In trying to get their point across, they want to demonize a certain race or culture just to make their hero or the people that they're pulling for look better. But this show is not doing that. They're sort of shining a spotlight on both sides. And in this show, the Mexicans are looking like they're in the wrong. They're trying to, create this revolution through bloodshed, through violence, and they're kind of highlighting how it's hitting both sides, that the innocent people on both sides of this war are going to be the ones caught in the crossfire. Just like in episode one, the first person who gets shot in that firing line is a father and protecting his little daughter. And at first I was like, oh, here we go again. But then I really thought about that scene and I said, that's true. When you have things like that, when you have protests, think about the people caught in the middle of the protest. It's the innocent people that didn't want to be there in the first place. They were just kind of roped in, or they come out and they're like, hey, what's going on? I mean, these wars are happening in the street. People who have nothing to do with this war, with this movement, are the people getting caught in the crossfire. They're the people getting hurt. So it doesn't matter what side you're picking, both sides are taking loss and they're both feeling, the pain of losing people on either side. And you can say this about gang wars. You could say this about any kind of war we fight overseas, anything like that. And it's kind of appropriate during Memorial Day, right? Shout out to the troops. But when you're in that situation, you often find that the villains of the story aren't the ones feeling the impact. The people caught in this Mexicans versus the cops kind of beef are going to be the people in the middle, the people who don't want anything to do with this. They just want to live their lives, and they're getting caught up in this nonsense along with the cops, with the Mexicans, with the underground. And I like that the show illustrates that. Neither side wants the other side to lose, but they don't want to bend on their point of view either. And it's true life. When you're in an argument, both sides want to think that they're right, but they never think about the people they catch in the middle of the argument. And it's beautiful. And Lewis starts to see this as he goes to Tiega's house for the first time ever, and he meets their mother, and he sees their customs, and he talks to the man who tried to kill him, who he should be mad at. By the end of it, he doesn't feel that hatred and rage or even that fear he had before. He feels kind of a pity and a sympathy for what's going on. He's starting to realize that both sides of this argument is just screwing over the middle. And I really like that the show illustrates this. I think it's really great emotional moments in his scenes, particularly with their mother, is quite possibly one of the best scenes of dialogue the show has had. The fact that he's Jewish and he comes in and he has a great line and he says, "Oh man, I thought you were a Jew." It was just it was just so great that you see multi-cultures kind of crossing over and different religions and beliefs, but they all essentially believe in the same thing. A higher power will protect them, and that they have to hold on to a sense of culture and a higher power to get through rough times. And you know what? I can really relate to that. So Lewis had a really good arc in this, and I really love his character. He's my favorite character of the show. If he dies, I'd be quite salty. And I almost feel like the show highlights him a lot. Man, if he dies by the end of this, I will be so upset. But he seems to be the emotional anchor for the department, for Tiaga, for, the family, because the mother looks at him and says, "You keep my son safe." And there's something about that where I'm like, wow. I mean, it was some pretty deep stuff. So let's go to Sister Molly now. Sister Molly had an important role, and she had about maybe 2 minutes of screen time. But within that, we get a lot of revelations. First off, her mother is weird, and the bodyguard dude she has is creepy. They've been following her. She slept with him. They put it together. I don't know what the end game is of this church, but that mother is creepy, man. She's creepier than uh, Magda or Santa Morta. Like, just the way this actress portrays the creepy ass mom trying to, how do I put it, protect the church and the image. She's creepy as hell. And I don't know if she's not going after him because he's a detective, but right now she's just gathering information and it can't be good. But Sister Molly in this episode really shines. She has a moment with Josefina, and this moment, and I'm just going to put Josefina in this category because we don't really see her that much in this episode, but both of them have a moment that to me is one of the most powerful moments I've seen. And you know what? I'm not one of these like Me Too guys, okay? I think that the movement gets overused. I am a person, though, who can relate to what happened to her in the previous episode, and she gives a detail. And one, she's a young girl. Uh, and two, when she describes the detail and the shame she feels for what happened, it really is a sad, heartbreaking moment. But more importantly than that, when Sister Molly realizes that that's the man she's fucking sister, something about that scene, like the actress has the best look. Like the way she plays that scene, she has this look of, oh, I'm talking to the sister and giving advice. Oh, like this is kind of awkward and I don't know how to take it. And she gives her this great advice, a great pick me up kind of moment, and is really comforting her. She's doing her church side of the thing, and you can see where the personal life and the church side kind of collide in that moment. And it's really foreshadowing that this is not going to end well. She's counseling the sister. She's dating, I guess, or sleeping with the brother. And all of this is not going to end well. And that's pretty much my takeaway from this scene is that she's trying to keep the personal life separate. The problem is they're both figureheads, and all of this stuff that they're doing has to come to a head. And her being a leader in this church and an advocate for this stuff and what she's preaching is in direct conflict with what she's actually doing. And it's pretty much the theme of the show, right? The theme of both their roles. Tiago is in constant conflict with the police force for the choices he makes, and he's in constant conflict with the family for having to be a police officer, and he's not fitting in any community. She is in direct conflict with the church, sleeping with a police officer, and an investigation on top of that. But she's also in conflict with what she morally believes, and she's being pulled deeper into this world without trying to be. She's trying to keep them separate and they're merging. So all of this, I'm sure, is going to boil over, and there's going to be some tough choices that are going to be have to be made. I think she's going to have to choose between her role in the church and her role in his life. And she is indirectly being put into his life by counseling the sister. And it's so beautiful because the setup for the scene and them highlighting that she doesn't know that's his sister and the way the actress has that look, it's beautiful because you feel that she's realizing, oh crap, like I am personally getting involved with this family and this is not good. So Sister Molly had a pretty big moment. Let's go to Peter. Peter, our resident Nazi doctor. This guy, folks, this guy. First off, let me just say, hats off to the actor. I loved him in OG Penny Dreadful. He played the monster of Frankenstein. he did a magnificent job, but I think he is more chilling than he's ever been in this role. This man, the way he plays the duality of being a father figure, a figure in the community by being a hygienist, the way that he's putting on the duality of family man, pillar of the community, and then switch it to uh, Nazi and messing around with someone who is married, because Natalie Dormer is playing up like she's married to an abusive husband and trying to sway this guy to get in deep with her. And, you know, it's beautiful because he has this moment with his family where you see the family man side of him and maybe even genuinely what he wants. Like he wants to be this character that he puts on for the world. And clearly he's not there for that. Okay. I strongly believe his character is a plant. He's there to be within the community on purpose, right? He's with the Nazis within America and they're cooking up something and they're all interwoven and there's a clear confliction between what he has to do and what he wants to be. And there's also a confliction with who he is as a person and who he betrays himself to be. And dude plays it so well because one moment you could feel he's a kind family guy, you like him, you take your kids to see him, and then bam, Nazi. And it's also a thing that the show illustrates that these monsters aren't really monsters. They're people, okay? Natalie Dormer is a monster, okay? Magdalene is a monster. Santa Morta is a monster. They're the supernatural beings. But the people who look like monsters are people too. They have their own struggles, trials, and tribulations that they go through. They have their own families. They have their own camouflage that they're putting on to the public. And these worlds are in direct conflict with each other. And Peter goes to help Natalie Dormer's character. She's crying. She calls him up at home. He gives a BS reason, doctor emergency. And even the wife knows he's full of crap. And the wife, on some level, I really like because she knows there's a dark side to him. She highlighted it in the last episode, but yet she stays with him. And I feel like it's for the wealth, for the children kind of a deal. But she knows he's full of crap. And I like the fact that they don't play the wife as oh, I love you, sweetie, do whatever. Like she's hip to the game, but she is just whatever about it. She's like, you know what? Go do your doctor emergency. And she has a great line when she goes, "We can't have one goddamn family night," and it's a real highlight to the cracks in the family that's breaking. He goes to the hotel and he's covering up bodies. And the creepy part about this scene is not that he covers up this murder of the husband. Really, she just got some random John at a bar just to pad out the story. But the highlight of this episode is not that he is covering up the murder, but the fact that he is doing a really good job at it. And that says to me his character has murdered other people. He's covered other bodies and he's a pro at this. So there's a little bit more to Peter than meets the eye. And that's going to come to the surface. So, we got Peter's character doing shenanigans. Let's go to the next highlight of this episode. And I'm going to go to, because we hit Sister Molly, Josefina, Peter, let's go to Natalie Dormer. Her character in this, she has some just outstanding moments. Even the annoying character she plays had a great moment. Each time highlighting the seeds of deception that she's sowing throughout the show. Townsend has this moment where he's talking about how he's found like his painting, his thing of beauty. He's happy because he had that little gay moment in the last episode with the Nazi driver, but he's feeling these feelings of love for this person, and he expresses this to Natalie Dormer's character and tells her about how, you know, he's he's feeling revitalized and all of this stuff. And she says, very cold and calculated, and it's a really great moment. She goes, "You want to keep a lid on how many people you're telling this great revelation that you're having, because people will use that to destroy you." And I really liked at that moment in the episode, Natalie Dormer, is basically telling him like, "Hey, I'm your go-to. I'm your right hand. But if you go blabbing about how you're feeling, being gay as a mayor, your constituents are not going to be as forgiving, right? They will use it as ammunition." And as a councilman, he is constantly being put under a microscope. And I like this moment that she's there for him. She will listen to him and let him vent, but he wants to keep his mouth shut because he is in a position of power. And I really like that because this shows a side of Townsend that's just not this racist asshole, but more of a guy who has this role and this weight and these pressures that he has to maintain this public image. And he needs something, right? He needs an escape from all of the things that he's feeling, from all of these people, all of these shady deals. I mean, it lets you know this character is just more than a figurehead for, you know, uh, the council, and that he's more than just this asshole trying to put railroads through people's homes. He's a person too. He has needs and wants and desires that extend beyond his duties. And these are the things that drive him, keep him going every day, keep him sharp and edgy and, bullheaded on his approach. And something made me like his character more for having that vulnerability about himself. And it gives more to the story because he's not one dimensional anymore. He's just a guy who has a higher position anybody could have, but because of how he has to approach the job, how he is the man who could move the room, he could captivate the audience and at the same time piss off the other people on the council. He toes a line and he needs a release from that pressure, right? I mean, he's going against this other woman, he's going against this group of people. He's doesn't necessarily believe in everything that he puts forward. It's just a facade, and I like it. I think it gives a lot of depth, and Natalie Dormer is really good as his cold, calculated sidekick. She's kind of adds and keeps him grounded, and I like that. Natalie Dormer as the abusive wife, she does a really good German accent. I don't know if I've said that before. I probably have. She has a really good German accent. And to see her at the bar pick up this guy and basically use him as an alibi, it was great. And her as the underground movement, the underground Mexican movement, her in that role, this was the first time I connected with the character. Her stoking the flames and comforting Mateo while feeding into his ego was brilliantly played. Bringing up the conquistadors of old and how, leaders have to make tough choices and you have to wear it like a body armor and stuff like that. It was a very good scene. I don't know how I feel about the three-way in this episode. A little weird. Um, Essentially her brother and her and Mateo. That scene kind of threw me for a loop. I understand it. It's a little weird. Um, I feel like we're getting into a lot of Game of Thrones territory, and I never co-signed it, the sleeping with your distant relative thing they had going on the show. But Natalie Dormer's hot, so I guess, you know, I guess I'll go with it. But yeah, it was a short little scene, and just a sidebar, it was probably more disturbing than anything else I saw in this episode because I was like, oh, he throws his switchblade, and then I'm like, oh, wow, he's gonna like, beat the shit out of him, throw him out of the bed. But then he like lays with both of them, and I'm like, oh, he's letting, oh, oh, oh God, yeah, we're going here. But that's the Showtime scene. Showtime does that. Showtime, HBO, Cinemax, they all have their sex scenes that they throw in there, and power to them. It doesn't really add or detract from the story. It's not a negative or a positive. I feel like some of these scenes are just in there. Uh, and it's kind of weird. I almost wish that they would cut out some of those sex scenes because I feel like they don't add anything, but they don't take anything away. It's not a statement. It's just kind of in there. And I feel like they throw it in there just because they expect people are going to want to see these people naked. And it's like, I could take or leave half of these scenes. Like, you're not really adding anything to your story. You're not really taking anything away. There's really no need to throw a heavy-handed sex scene in every episode. You could have ones with like Sister Molly and Tiago and kind of leave it there if you want to illustrate the relationship. Like I understand them doing the shot of Mateo and those two versus Tiago and Sister Molly and the clashing of the relationships, the differences between the two of them. I understand what they're going for, but I still think that it's more uh, unnecessary and it wastes time. So, you know, Natalie Dormer's characters pretty much do that throughout the episode. She's highlighted more in this, and there's a vulnerability for a split second you see when she's shifting characters that makes me interested because I feel like she's not just this big bad. She has something going on with her in her. There is some reason why she wants to interfere with man's affairs. And I really want to know why she is so pissed. Like, I want to know why she wants to destroy the world. She doesn't necessarily want to destroy the world. I think she wants to destroy man. And I want to know why. What is her beef? Why is she so pissy in particular towards human beings? I don't know. I mean, you start to get these things within her, and it's very slight. I have to watch the episode a couple of times, but there's a brief moment where she's she kind of makes attachments with these different people that she's pushing. I don't know if she's really attached, if she's just using them, if she has to get attached in order to use them. I don't know if she's going just sees them as instruments or if she likes these particular people and that's why she chose them. I really hope by episode 6 or 7 we get more answers to why she's doing what she's doing. We need answers because as great as she plays it, those two characters are the weakest point of this story. And I feel like that's what the show is supposed to be about. But yet they're the weakest aspects within the show. It's kind of weird. The supernatural is starting to feel like the weaker aspect of the show, and it's because you have no context to why anything is going on. It's just kind of thrown in there to remind you that, yeah, Santa Morta is in the background over here. Yeah, Magda is over here. But they don't highlight why they are important. And of course, the mother of the kids, she's a witch. Okay, she talks to Santa Morta. Okay, she has this beautiful dialogue with Lewis. Okay, but why is she a key? What is this battle? Why do I care? That's my one glaring issue. That honestly is what stops me from giving the show a 10. Um, or rating it higher certain episodes is because I don't have all of the puzzle pieces, and I feel like they're building the characters in the world good, but they're not building the supernatural aspect very well, and that's pretty much what your sticking point is for the show. And I've seen very little supernatural in here. Window blows out here. She shifts here and there. We know she's a shapeshifter. We know she can influence people by talking to them or whispering something in their ear. But besides the first episode, you don't really get a sense of why we should care about the supernatural world or that it's even a big threat, really. These other outside forces seem to be a bigger threat to this world than Natalie Dormer is. And I don't understand if it's a highlight that she is inciting it. I don't know. I just feel like they highlight her a lot, but they don't explain much about what her purpose is. And I'd really like context to her character. Natalie Dormer's character is interesting. I do want to know a lot about her, but I get very annoyed by these episodes because I feel like they don't really want to make that the focal point quite yet. I'm hoping the back end of the season, like by the time we get to season 6, I hope by the back end we're going to get more supernatural. Like the episode prior to this, when they had the Peter's kids interacting with Creepy Boy, and he was showing, that girl chopped up and whatever. That was some cool supernatural imagery. Uh, that kind of stuff is kind of sprinkled in there. So, you know, I don't know if the supernatural world plays a smaller part because now we're in the 30s. Like in the 16th century, right, when Penny Dreadful, the OG one, was time frame, the supernatural seemed to have more of a presence, right? And the people seem to believe more in that. And I feel like maybe the purpose is in the 30s, man has sort of gotten a scientific mind. So the supernatural aspects, the supernatural world, is been taking a back seat for reason and logic. And if that's the route they're going, then I kind of understand. I just feel like they need to make the motivations clear. We need our two main characters to have more screen time, to have more of a presence, and I need a plan. Okay, we're 5 episodes in. We're not in the first two or three. Normally you world build then. By 4, 5, and 6, you're getting into the meat and potatoes. I will know by the next episode where the story is going because every single show, the sixth episode or the halfway point of a Showtime, Cinemax, Stars, whatever show is always the point where they drop the big shit because that's where we're halfway through the season and you want people to go, hey, I gotta tune in. This is getting interesting. So I hope episode 6 drops some serious bombs. Like, I want some stuff blowing up. I want some people dying. I need some more. Okay, so Natalie Dormer's character was good. She's one of the main reasons why I rated this episode a 9. She has some good moments, great dialogue, nice interaction. I liked it. Now, let's get to the meat of potatoes. Okay, I got 2 characters left, and these 2 characters I am going to review and I'm going to explain both of them because they're interwoven through this whole episode. The last 2 characters and the best performances. I'm going to do a new segment, MVPs of this episode by far are Mateo and Tiago. The, man, okay, so Mateo, I've highlighted, he had his moment with Natalie Dormer's character, okay? Now he's out of this episode for a bit, and we follow Tiago. He's following this person who's from the underground who killed this cop and dumped him off on their police station. And he is at a real crossroads. One, he's battling the idea of sleeping with a witness, okay? Because Sister Molly could potentially be a witness in their case, and he is sleeping with her. And anyone who knows the law, that's in submittable evidence, okay? Inadmissible. There we go. It's inadmissible in the court of law if the detective is banging the lead witness. So if they find something about this church, okay, he is not going to be able to call her to the stand because they are having a relationship. They might not even be able to take any of his statements because he is in direct conflict in this investigation. So he's got that going on. And he can't share this with his partner, even though Lewis already knows. And he kind of highlights it midway in the episode. And it's funny because he's saying, like, man, what are you doing? You're sleeping with the key witness in an investigation. Like, bro, if this goes to court, there's going to be some shit going down. So we have that going down. And then he starts following this lead. And as he gets closer to who he thinks the suspect is, he's starting to realize the person they're chasing is someone close to him. He doesn't know how close, but it's pretty close. He gets some hints, and there's a bandage on his finger, and he thinks it's Raul. And he goes to Raul, and Raul gives him a name, and they follow it to this lady. And can I say, this part of the episode to me was great because it shows the cracks in Tiega's armor. He has to question this lady who has vital information about an apartment building that this witness is in that they need to track down to get to the underground, right? And Lewis should be the one grilling this lady, right? You know, he's the Mexican half, he can speak the language, so he's supposed to be the soft hand, and Lewis is the hard hand, and that doesn't happen at all. Tiago loses his shit at this lady, and he shows this other side, like almost contempt for his people keeping quiet about another, Mexican person. And he goes off on her talking about, I'll deport you, I'll drop you in the middle of the desert, and that little girl next to you, you ain't never gonna see her. So either you give me the information I want, or I'm gonna deport your ass. And I was like, the irony, yo, the, yo, the irony of a Mexican detective telling another Mexican they're gonna deport them was not lost on me. I, in that moment, I realized what this show was doing, and I loved it. That was great. That was a great, like, con- that was a great character development because you are putting your character in direct conflict within their own beliefs, and I love it. I love that they have the balls to have their own character because they could have him shown in this perfect light, right? You could have your main character like the Chicano god, right? He does everything right. He always solves the case. He's always soft-hearted, and he's like the person who's gonna coddle his people. But they don't do that. They make him a dick in this episode. Like, he's a dick to this lady, and I'm kind of like, whoa, buddy, you're gonna deport this lady, and she's providing for her children. It made me question how wrong that statement was that came out of his mouth, and it's great writing because for you to be on the side of this character and go, wow, man, you're fucking up, like you're threatening to deport your own people. There's something wrong. There's something broken in you to threaten your own kind and to threaten your own family. You've got some shit going on, and it is perfect. This writing is unbelievably good. It's subtle, and it's thought provoking, and it's challenging, and I love that. I love that they can write things that don't have to be biased. They don't have to take one side. This show is literally has you on the fence both ways. One minute you could be siding with the cops, the next minute you could be siding with the Mexican community. The next minute you're just like, I don't know what's going on. So, bravo. He did that scene well. And like the way he gets pissed off and his partner goes, "Hey, partner, what are you doing? Like, what's going on with you? Like, I don't want to go into this building and chase a perp, and you could be doing anything." He describes him as a yo-yo with a gun, and I love the analogy because that's what he is right now. He is in personal turmoil, and he has to protect this person next to him, and he doesn't even know how the hell he feels. So they track the kid down, and then the revelation comes. Here's where the episode takes a 360, and we finally get to what each episode has been building to. He is face to face with his perpetrator. He is face to face with the person who's been on the run, Mateo. And, uh, man, like, man, what could I say? Like, this scene, okay, this scene hits you as a family person or a brother, okay? I've got two younger brothers, and to feel the betrayal in that moment when he corners them and he draws his gun. And the thumbnail's up there, okay? You can see the thumbnail in the picture where he's just kind of standing there holding the gun with his head down. There's something so beautiful about the shot, this last shot in the show. There's something so painful in the last moments of this show. And I got to tell you, Zod doesn't get choked up very much, okay? There's very few moments in a show that get me like, "Ugh." But as a brother to two knucklehead younger brothers, how do you reconcile someone doing something so terrible? And this is the youngest brother. He's the middle brother, okay? And Raul is the oldest brother, right? But both of them bear the choices that the other ones make. And Tiago bears the choices that both of them make more than anyone in this show. And in that moment, it's so heartbreaking because hats off to this actor. The look in his face, the way he raises his gun at the younger brother, and for a split second I thought he was just going to shoot him and say fuck it, because he doesn't want to deal with the ramifications of his own brother is the suspect. He's the culprit. He's been chasing the whole goddamn episode, has come down to him face to face with not seeing the signs of his younger brother being so hurt and damaged by everything going on. He's been caught up in his own world, and he has failed. And I'm just ad libbing what he feels, but he's failed as an older brother to notice the warning signs before it's too late. His brother is in. His brother is part of this underground movement now. His brother has made his choice, and it's on the opposite side. And really, the fence seems kind of metaphoric, right? The brother is hugged against this fence, and it feels like a really a figurative fence between the two of them. They are literally on the opposite sides now of this battle, and he has to make a choice in this moment. Does he let him go, or does he catch his man? And really, the whole entire episode is about these choices. It's about where is he going to land in this war? Is he going to let people go because they're family, or is he going to do his duty and catch the criminals? That's really what the show has been up to this point about. And when he's talking to him, there's like tears in his eyes. The gun is shaking. He's like, how could you? How could you do that? And he tells him, about the sister. And now shit's really because so now he bears the weight of knowing what's happened to his sister, what's happened to his brother, and the fact that he's been so caught up in other stuff that he's ignored the stuff going on with the family. And that final moment, the final frame seemed really good. And it's not a gotcha moment. It's not a bring you back into next week. It feels like a very somber, like, oh, wow. Like, because for a split second, I thought he was going to shoot him. I'm just going to be honest with you. I thought he was going to shoot him. I'm going to be honest with you. I had shot my brother. Like, no, I'm just playing. I wouldn't have, but boy, I'd have been pissed. I'd have put the gun down and at least whooped him. I'd have given him a good whooping because, like, boy, you killed an officer. Like, he killed another human being. He killed an officer, and he put his family and his brother in the most uncomfortable position on God's green earth, because now his brother, by letting him go, is going to have to cover that up. And up to this point, he's been pretty straight-laced. I mean, towing that line. And he has to make the biggest choice, and he has to make the biggest decision, and he chooses to let him go. There will be consequences for this action. There is going to be ramifications because when Lewis finds out that he let go the person who did it to hide, because now they may never find Mateo again after that night. Now he knows his brother is hunting him. They're not going to get a hold of him again. Natalie Dormer is going to keep him hidden until the master plan comes together. So that was his last opportunity, possibly in this show, to take his brother in. And let's think about the long-term ramifications for a second. Yes, he shielded his brother from the windfall of what'll happen now. But in the long term, him being out there to make more reckless, stupid decisions is going to have an even bigger impact on what he has to do later. Tiago failed to realize in this one key moment that he's not protecting him. He's hurting him. He's hurting his family. And most importantly, he's hurting his career by choosing to cover something up. Sometimes the best option in this situation is to let your family go through the consequences of their actions. He made a choice, okay? Yes, the sister was raped. That was terrible. I can't say if I was him, I wouldn't have done the same choices, but I also would have accepted the consequence of those choices. And Mateo wants to be a man, but I think he's starting to realize he can't live with the choices that a man has to make. Okay, Raul Raul knows what he did, and he doesn't shy away from that. He knows the consequences of the storm that he incited, and he lives with that. And that's the whole contrast between Raul, Tiago, and Mateo. Is that Mateo is the young dog, right? He's the young buck. He threw himself into an adult world and made an adult choice, I feel, before he was ready to take the adult consequences that come with the adult action. And I think that this scene really beautifully illustrates that fact because he doesn't want to turn himself in. He doesn't want, you know, to do what needs to be done to stop what's coming, but he wants his brother to let him go, you know? And it makes me love hate Mateo's character. I like the depth that he has, the feeling of helplessness as the younger member of the family. But at the same time, I get pissed off and it hits me as a brother too, because it's like he doesn't see what his actions are doing. He doesn't know that he is going to drive a wedge in this family. He is going to make his brother make hard and tough decisions that could have been avoided if he would have manned up and turned himself in. And I know I'm getting fiery about it, but damn, when you watch this, don't you feel that? Don't you feel like, to me, this was one of the best endings to an episode I've seen in television in a long time because so much is said in that last couple of shots that really highlight without having to drive this point home all season long. It's about choices, it's about family, it's about decisions, it's about putting your job sometimes before your family. I think the show in the last moments really illustrated the tough choices that every character is going to have to make, and each character making the exact wrong choice. I mean, Ciega made a bad choice by not taking his brother in or shooting him. I'm sorry, that little bastard had it coming. He he put so many people at risk by his one decision. And at the same time, I understand Mateo's point of view, right? Because Mateo, he, was avenging something that happened to his sister. And let's be real, who out there would not make the same exact choice? If a family member or someone close to you was violated in that way, I understand that. But you have to understand what the consequences of that action is. Because most of us who would go and do that, we full well know what's going to happen afterward. There's going to be jail, there's going to be court trials. Your family is going to be dragged through the mud. You know, I understand both perspectives, and that's what makes the end of this episode so good and bump it to a 9 for me. Because In that moment, I feel like the end of this episode did an amazing job of highlighting the main character of the story. And the main character is Tiago and what he is going to have to do, the tough decisions he has to make as a detective. Okay? Forget him being the first Mexican detective. That's not what it's about, and the show shows that. It's not about his race, it's about him and morally what he has to do to toe the line. And he's going to have to make decisions that indirectly puts him at odds with his family. And the first time he could do it, but the second time, that's the younger brother. I gotta say, any of us would probably protect our younger sibling. The sad part about this moment, and the really heartbreaking part of this moment, is that when you become someone in authoritative positions, right? When you become a soldier, when you become a police officer, when you become a fireman, when you become a public official, you have an obligation that supersedes sometimes even family. You are not working for 4 or 5 people. You are working for the greater good. You're not just protecting your family, you're protecting every family. And in this episode, there is subtle writing that shows the contrast, that each of them are at odds with the notion that they have to go against their personal wants or needs. But at the end of the day, the job is going to demand that either he is going to protect and serve the greater good or he's going to serve his family, but he can't serve both. And that's becoming more and more clear. He cannot serve the badge and he can't serve his family. At a point, he's going to have to, and I hate to say this, and I might get berated for it, but at a point, it really does come down to the badge, right? You know, family members of police officers and family members of servicemen and things like that, they all, or most of them that I've had the pleasure of talking with, they have had to accept the fact that days, months, weeks, years, there's going to be times when the family has to come second. It doesn't mean you don't love the family. It doesn't mean you don't love your girlfriend. It doesn't mean you don't love your son, your daughter, whoever. That's not what it means. It means that you love your family so much that you put yourself out there. You put your life on the line to protect other families, other mothers, daughters, fathers, sisters, brothers, husbands. You have an obligation now to protect and serve other members of the community. And at points, it's going to supersede your relationships. It's going to supersede your family's relationships. It's going to supersede what you do within the family. You are going to have to give yourself to aspects of your job to be the best that you can be. And you want to be the best that you can be to protect people because you believe in something so strongly. It really speaks to a moral code, and it's a calling that not everybody can do. And I love that this show doesn't demonize the choices of being a police officer, but it highlights the difficulties that that presents. This show highlights the choices between job and family, right? Between duty and between being there for people. And sometimes you've got to put the family on the back burner to serve the greater good. And nothing illustrated that point more than this final heartbreaking moment in this episode. That shot, man, that's my thumbnail because it's so beautiful and it so articulates the whole point of this show. Is in that moment, he is broken, man. He is shattered because he realizes, he got the badge in the first beginning. And for him, it was like, yeah, I'm the first Chicano detective. I'm going to come in here and make things right. But as he goes through this episode and as he's traveling through this series, he's starting to realize that, man, I can't always get what I want. You know, he can't have that relationship with Sister Molly. It's in direct conflict with his duty. He can't protect his family because he has to protect the other families that are going to be hurt. in this. It's not just, let's just take away other families. Look at the community. He is also protecting and serving the Mexican community as a whole. And that comes with putting his own family on the back burner. This is why I put Tiago as my last highlight for this episode. Because for me, this was a smart move. He is your lead character. If I'm not invested in the leads, I'm not watching this show. But when they ended this episode, I want to see the next episode so bad because I want to know what kind of shitstorm that end is going to, if they're going to pick it up right back there, like him letting his brother run off. Is another cop going to catch him? I mean, what is the consequence when they find out that both his brothers were the cause of two major incidents? What's the ramifications for this? And the fact that he's not willing to do what needs to be done and arrest his brother. I'm sorry to say, he should have arrested him in that moment, and he didn't. By letting him walk, he made an active choice, and all of those repercussions are going to come to a head. So I might do a little teaser uh, for the next episode. I might do a highlight before I get into this, but I'm thinking I'm off today, but every Monday I'm going to do these reviews at about 3 uh, because I get done at work 2:30 and got to relax with my own woman. But I'm going to do these at 3 o'clock because this is a sweet time. I don't ruin it for anyone the night before in case you didn't watch it. I give people a chance to digest the episode. Maybe I helped you guys see different perspectives. Maybe I didn't. In the comments, let me know. What are you thinking of Penny Dreadful so far? Have you gotten this many parallels that I have? Do you feel the characters are relatable? Do you like the whole you know, duty to the police officer versus duty to the family angle that they're going in? Do you want to see more supernatural? Go ahead and let me know. I'm really enjoying this, and I just want to say thank you to everybody because I've had 156 reviews, and if I keep on getting doing views like this, I might do more. I'm thinking I'm going to do live episode reviews of Billions and other shows. So if you're liking this, hit the like button. And if you want some more details or you want me to put in other stuff in my reviews, leave me comments so that the next week I can kind of incorporate that so I can give you guys the best review possible. Because I feel like a lot of people aren't really diving into the show, and I don't want it to go unwatched. I think it's a great show. I think it's well written. I think it's well acted, and I think it deserves to have um, you guys giving time and effort to it. I mean, we don't get shows like this very often, and I really appreciate Showtime for being ballsy and hiring a writer who cares about giving us the best story, making us think, and making us care about the tale that he's telling. So, uh, thank you. I really appreciate that, Gary North. Um, yeah, I'm really enjoying this show. And go on, check it out at Showtime. If you don't got it, I believe like, eventually Netflix will get it because they got the rights. So yeah, I do agree, Jamie Vick. There is a choppiness, and to that point, I think the choppiness comes in with the supernatural and the real. Like, I feel like they haven't struck the balance between what Natalie Dormer and the chick who plays Santa Morta. I think they haven't struck that balance of integrating both. Um, and I think that they have a lot of threads, as I said in my previous review, that they're spinning off into. I do like though how they're starting to interconnect these characters, like Sister Molly and Josefina, Mateo and Tiago, Lewis and the rest of the family. I kind of see where he's going. Some of it does have choppy narrative, but I think that, or I hope, by the end of this, I really feel like that there is a direction. I don't feel like it's one of these shows where they're just throwing a bunch of stuff out there and it doesn't mean anything. I really do feel like this is planned. And I feel like there is a direction and that it is going somewhere. And as long as I continue to feel like this, I'll continue to bring you guys reviews. But I do agree. That's been one of my issues that I've said for episodes one, two, three, and four, is that the narrative does get choppy at points, but not to the point where I can't forgive it. It just it's one of those things where I have to keep on watching the episode. Like I'll watch it once and then I'll watch it again. And then I'll kind of go through and watch the other episodes and follow along. And, I've had to write down notes and stuff. So I know if I have to write down notes, it probably gets tricky for the average viewer, but it is intriguing enough to keep me going. So, anyways, thank you, Jamie Vick. Thank you, Gary North. Yeah, that's been my thing too. They haven't connected the different stories, but I think if they play it right, they will have a massive masterpiece on their hands. If they can make all of these stories come to a head and they all somehow connect to each other, I mean, if he does that, I mean, this guy's a good writer. He wrote the first Penny Dreadful. He did an excellent job with that show. So I'm gonna give him the benefit, and I'm gonna follow it. I'm invested. I'm gonna follow this thing right to the end, and we'll all talk about it. I might even do a series overview, and then just talk about the whole thing as a whole after I get done with each individual episode. So yeah, Jamie, we'll talk about this because I'm glad you're enjoying it. And thank you, Gary North, Jamie Vick, everybody, people who's popped in and out. I really appreciate you. Hit that like button. Go ahead and share this video with other people. And you guys all take care. Chat, be well. I really appreciate you guys coming with me on this journey. And remember the one and only rule here in the Phantom Car: kneel before General Zod.